I mean, it started with, yeah, it started very early. I was maybe a teenager. I was about 12 or 13 years old, maybe even earlier. Because of the war in Lebanon, you know, we grew up during the war, and we had a very strained childhood. We can't, I mean, we were a lot of time in shelters, or, you know, at home behind sandbags. We couldn't go outside. We couldn't play. We couldn't really experiment life in our childhood the way we should. So I think the TV started becoming very important in my life. Watching films, and we were very lucky because we used to live right above a shop that used to rent video, you know, the VHS tapes. So we used to watch so many films, and I think it allowed me to really escape the boredom of my own life and my own childhood. And so I started wanting to belong to this world, wanting to create stories that allowed me to escape and maybe live through other people's lives, or maybe because I want to escape my own reality. So I decided very early, this is what I want to do in life. I want to become a filmmaker. Usually what comes first is theme, before anything else, before the story, before the characters. It's an obsession of the moment, a theme of the moment that starts becoming recurrent and starts becoming like an obsession, the need to talk about something very specific. And then it turns into a story, and then in this, maybe actually it turns into a character, and then it turns into a story. I'm not sure which comes first, but what I know for sure is that the theme comes first. The need to talk about a certain subject. For Caramel, the principal theme was actually, it started with wanting to understand women in the Middle East, and more specifically in Lebanon, more understanding why is there so much contradiction between who they want to be, who they aspire to be, and who they allow themselves to be, because of social pressure, because of the weight of how people look at you, so it was really wanting to understand how it functions between women, and how women look at society, and how society looks at women, more than anything else, and also trying to tackle it from different perspectives, through different women coming from different backgrounds, each one with a different story, with a different experience, with a different religion, a different socioeconomic background. So it was more trying to understand women more than sisterhood itself. Yeah. Caramel is actually a long time ago, so it's difficult now to just go back and try to remember everything. It was mainly very much inspired by the people I knew, women I knew, the strength of women in my family, being fascinated with certain personalities, and then understanding later that I was actually inspired by a person I knew without even knowing. When I'm writing the script, sometimes you start imagining a character, but you don't really know that you're actually digging in from your own experience, from your own, the people that you know, and it's later on when you meet them again, or when somebody draws your attention to it, that you realize that you're actually inspired by somebody you know. But absolutely, I've always been fascinated by the women in my family, especially how they find the strength to keep living in spite of everything that's happened to them during the war. You know, and many of the women in my family have lost very close people, either sons or daughters or brothers or husbands, or so. And it's always a very difficult loss. You know, during the war, you lose people you love in very harsh and catastrophic ways. So I've always been fascinated by their strength. How do they find the strength to keep living, to wake up in the morning, put on their, you know, clothes and brush their teeth and just, you know, face life? How do they do it? So it's a mixture of all this, you know, fascination and being intrigued, wanting to know more, wanting myself also to know more. Sometimes I do things maybe, or I write things like a sort of a therapy. For me, it's like you want to get it out, to understand it, and then move on, in a way, move on to something else. I put myself in that situation. I was wondering, back then, I was pregnant with my first child when, you know, those conflicts erupted in Lebanon. And it was a conflict that erupted really in a few hours. We weren't really well prepared for it. So I thought, how can we be that stupid sometimes to just enter into a conflict where few hours before we were actually living together in the same neighborhoods, you know, eating the same bread, our kids go to the same school, but we are able to just, I think, do this to each other just because of this culture of belonging, the culture of belonging to a group. So when you belong to a group and this group enters into a conflict with a different group, your culture of belonging, it gains on everything else. And this is what matters. And I thought, you know, if I was in those women's shoes, if I was in those shoes, if my son was about to take a weapon and go down on the street and kill somebody else's son, another woman's son, what would I do as a mother to stop him? How far would I go? What would be the strategies I would go through to stop him from doing that? And that's how the whole story started. It became slowly the story of a village where women were going to stop their men from fighting, because I thought at that point of myself. I would have done all those things that those women did, I think. Of course, treating it in a humorous way, because also through laughter, I think you solve a lot of other issues. Yeah, but I was really putting myself in those shoes when I thought of those women. Caramel, I wrote it at the Cine Fondation of the Cannes Film Festival, but then I got married, I got pregnant, I had kids. So it was very important for me to be close to my children. So I write at home. I wrote Where Do We Go Now at home. I wrote Capernaum at home. So my co-writers used to come every day and we used to hang out. And it was a very fun, I think, process. Because for me, I have to lure myself in a way into thinking that I'm not working, because I'm not a very disciplined person, and I need this chaos around me, and I need to talk. I think when you're talking out loud your ideas, it's easier. I think you become more creative in a way. I mean, at least this is my process. So there's a lot of things going on at the same time. A lot of breastfeeding, a lot of the diaper changing, a lot of you know, napping, a lot of eating, a lot of coffee drinking. So it's like they come home and we just spend the day, and we're not very disciplined. It's not like sometimes we would spend just hours and hours talking about completely something different than the script. So it's very important for me that I don't feel like it's work. I don't feel like it's something that I have to do in a very disciplined way. It's really a need to talk about a certain subject and debate, and the debate turns into scenes. And in the last film, it was actually the research that we used to do in parallel that turned into those scenes and into those films, and that were weaved in a way, those scenes that we used to see during the research. So it's a very undisciplined kind of writing process. I've always felt the need to write my own projects because I've always felt the need to express myself through my films. It's like, you know, it's like a journalist who writes an article about something that he really feels like saying, or somebody who writes a book, or it's the same thing. For me, I express myself or my point of view through a film I'm doing. That's why I feel the need to write. But I've never really, it's very tempting to work on other people's films or read other people's material. I've never really found that script that really talks to me yet. It doesn't mean that I will never find it. Maybe one day I will be working with other script writers, or it doesn't need to be always the same process. But until now, I've always felt the need to write my own things. Yeah. I'm very happy every time a film goes to Cannes, but it doesn't create more pressure. I already pressure myself enough, I think, and it doesn't have anything to do with, with any award we win or with any festival. It's just creating a new challenge every time, because you just don't want to be bored with what you're doing. You want to feel not only not to be bored, but you want to feel that actually your films have an impact on society, can have can trigger some kind of change, or can trigger some kind of debate, or it's really this that is the pressure more than anything else. I think, on the contrary, festivals actually open the doors for you, allow you to get more people interested in what you're doing, and more producers interested in what you're doing, and I think this is actually helping more than creating pressure. There's films that I used to watch over and over again. Like Annie was one of them, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Grease, Back to the Future. And I very much also admire the Iranian school of filmmaking. I remember, a film that really was a turning point in the way I watch films, or in the way I see what is the mission of cinema in general. Is that Turtles Can Fly. I don't know if you know it. It's by Bahman Gobadi. This was a film I discovered a long time ago in Rotterdam Film Festival, and it really changed. It was a turning point in the way I see films. Because he also worked with non-professional actors, with real kids that were having the same struggle also in their own life, and it had a very, very big impact on me, as a human being, understanding the world and understanding, how powerful a film can really be. How it can change your perspective on things, and it can change you as a human being in general. I think filmmaking needs to be a need. It needs to be, making a film has to be something that, because it's very difficult to make films. It's like going to war when you're making a film. It takes so much of your life, so much of your energy. It really needs to be a need. At least this is how I see it. And not be afraid to dream big, not be afraid to also walk in a way out of the classical structure of making films, to think outside the box. There's so many alternative ways of making films. It doesn't really have to be the same way, and I think I like to explore that a lot, usually. And really, passion is very important. If you want to, you have to be driven by passion.